The dawn over New Seoul burned with a brilliant orange hue, casting an eerie glow as the last of the Imperial vessels vanished into the vastness of space. Kim Ji-ho pulled himself free from the wreckage of a collapsed metal beam, the ringing in his ears from the explosions still reverberating in his mind. Blood trickled down his face, but the pain hardly mattered. His only thought was finding his daughter. "Nari," he cried out hoarsely, stumbling through the charred remnants of the colony's main street. "Nari, where are you?" The attack had come without warning. One moment, the children had been laughing and playing in Central Park while their parents worked. The next, the sky was ablaze with alien warships, their energy beams disintegrating buildings into pools of molten glass and twisted iron. Dr. Lee Sman emerged from behind an overturned vehicle, her medical coat torn and stained with dust. She was alive, but the devastation around her made her stomach churn. Corpses littered the streets, many of them children. "Ji-ho," she called, her voice strained. "Help me look for survivors." Ji-ho wanted nothing more than to continue his search for Nari, but Sman's words cut through his thoughts. Others needed help. He nodded grimly, setting off with her through the ruined city, their voices echoing in the silence as they called out for anyone who might still be alive. Elsewhere, Park sat amid the wreckage of the communication center, desperately trying to restore the damaged equipment. Sparks flew from severed wires as he worked, his face lit by the occasional flash of light. The Imperial fleet had struck first, obliterating the primary communication array, but Park held onto a sliver of hope that the backup systems might still be functional. "Come on," he muttered under his breath, reconnecting two melted cables. "Just give me one signal." 3 hours after the attack, they found their first group of survivors in the underground shelter beneath the school. 23 adults had made it, none of the children. "They targeted the children first," said teacher Yun Mai, her face streaked with tears. "The Imperial soldiers arrived in small ships. They didn't shoot at the adults until they had wiped out every child they could find." Dr. Sion's hands trembled as she wrapped a bandage around May's injured arm. "What do you mean they targeted the children?" "I saw it myself." Mira spoke up, her voice thick with emotion. "They had some kind of scanner. They'd pointed at groups of people and then only shoot the young ones like they were looking for something specific." Ji-ho froze. His daughter was 8 years old, the same age as the other children who were now gone. The breath caught in his throat. Park, meanwhile, had managed to get the emergency transmitter functioning. The small device hummed to life, connecting to the quantum communication network that linked all human colonies. He had only moments before the Imperial jamming systems would find and destroy the signal. "This is New Seoul Colony to any human receiver." Park's voice came through the transmitter, steady yet strained. "We've been attacked by Imperial forces. The colony is destroyed. Casualties are—" He hesitated, his mind struggling to find the words. How could he express the enormity of this? How could he explain what the Empire had done? Dr. Sman appeared beside him, holding a datapad. Her face was ashen, devoid of emotion. "I've counted them all," she said quietly. "The children. I've counted everyone." Park took the datapad, his hands unsteady as he read the numbers. 5,731. 5,731 children, Sman whispered, the weight of the words hanging in the air. Ji-ho staggered back. He had found Nari an hour ago, her body buried under the rubble of the playground. She'd been clutching her favorite toy, a small stuffed rabbit. The survivors gathered around the communication device, their faces blank with shock. Parents who had lost everything, teachers who had failed to protect their students, doctors who could do nothing to bring the dead back. "What do I tell them?" Park asked, his gaze falling on the others. Ji-ho's voice was low but resolute. "Tell them the truth. Tell them what the Empire did to our children." Park keyed the transmitter again. His voice was colder now, more controlled. "New Seoul Colony has been destroyed by Imperial forces. All children in the colony have been killed. Repeat, every child has been killed. The Imperial fleet targeted them specifically. They hunted our children like animals." He paused, his gaze sweeping over the faces of the survivors. In their eyes, he saw a growing darkness, a fury that had yet to be fully realized. The count is 5,731 dead children. The Empire must answer for this. Static filled the communication channel as the Imperial jamming systems began to cut off the signal. But Park had one more word to say. One word that captured the horror of what had happened here. Destruction, he said, the word sinking into the ruined landscape like a final, irrevocable truth. Dr. Sman moved among the survivors, tending to the wounded. But her mind was elsewhere, caught in the weight of her oath as a healer. The Empire had slaughtered thousands of innocent children. Did her oath still hold meaning in the face of such cruelty? Jiho stood motionless, his daughter's stuffed rabbit pressed to his chest. He had once been a man of peace, a believer in diplomacy and understanding between species. But in that moment, with his daughter's toy in his hands, something inside him broke. And in its place, something darker and more dangerous began to grow. Other survivors moved through the wreckage, gathering what fragments they could. Children's toys, school books, drawings made by small hands just hours earlier. Each item was collected with reverence, as if each piece of debris held the memory of what had been lost. The Imperial ships were long gone, but their message was clear. They hadn't come to conquer New Sol. They had come to exterminate its children. But why? Park kept the transmitter running as long as he could, repeating the same message over and over. The death toll, the targeted killing of children, the word destruction. When the Imperial jamming systems finally severed the signal, Park leaned back, looking at the faces of the survivors. 23 adults remained in a world that had once been home to nearly 6,000 children. What happens now? asked Mai, her voice barely a whisper. Jiho raised his eyes to the sky where the Imperial ships had disappeared. Now we make sure this never happens again. Dr. Sman, her voice suddenly urgent, broke the silence. They took data, she said. I saw them at the medical center during the attack. The Imperial soldiers were downloading files from our systems. What kind of files? Park asked, frowning. Medical records, genetic scans, brain development studies. Sman replied, her face growing pale. It was all about the children. The survivors exchanged looks, their understanding deepening with each word. The Empire hadn't attacked New Sol because it posed a threat. No, they had come because there was something unique about human children, something worth exterminating. As night fell over the shattered remains of the colony, the survivors worked together to bury the dead. Each small grave marked by a promise. The Empire would answer for this. Not just the soldiers who pulled the triggers, but the ones who gave the orders. Before they left the planet, they planted a memorial stone at the heart of the ruined colony. On its surface, they carved the names of the 5,731 children who had perished. Beneath the names, one word was etched: destruction. When the rescue ships from Earth arrived 3 days later, they found New Sol empty. The survivors were gone, having taken the last operational shuttle into the void. The only thing that remained was the memorial stone and its terrible promise. The word would spread across the galaxy. It would reach every human colony, every Earth ship, every peaceful settlement. And when it did, humanity would remember what the Empire had done to their children. The war was about to begin. Admiral Choi Miho was savoring his morning coffee when the emergency transmission reached his flagship. The Harmony, a United Earth Defense Force vessel, was patrolling the outer reaches of the system, far from any conflict zone. It was supposed to be a quiet day. The communications officer looked up from his station, his face etched with confusion. "Sir, we're receiving a priority message from New Sol Colony," he said, his voice laced with uncertainty. "Strange," Choi replied, setting down his coffee. "Strange how?" "It's just one word, sir," the officer responded, his brow furrowed. Repeated over and over. "The signal is weak, like it's being jammed." Choi stood up, his curiosity piqued. He walked over to the communication station, put it through on speaker. The bridge fell into an unsettling silence as Park's voice crackled through the static, raw and filled with pain. New Sol Colony has been destroyed by Imperial forces. All children in the colony have been killed. Repeat, all children have been killed. The coffee cup slipped from Admiral Choi's hand. crashing to the floor. Across the bridge, officers froze, staring at the speakers, unable to comprehend what they were hearing. The count is 5,731 dead children. The Empire must answer for this crime. Then came the word that would change everything. Destruction. Choi stood motionless for a moment, the weight of the transmission pressing down on him. Then his training kicked in. He barked orders with cold precision. "Give me Earth command, immediately. Send this recording to every human ship and colony in the network. And someone, find out what happened to New Seoul." 3 hours later, Dr. Yin Ji-won was working in her laboratory on Earth when her assistant burst through the door, frantic. "Doctor, you need to see this news report right now," the assistant said, urgency in her voice. Ji-won glanced up from her research on alien plant biology. She had dedicated the last decade to studying peaceful cooperation between species. Her work had been part of building a future where humans and aliens could thrive together. "What's so urgent?" Ji-won asked, her voice tinged with weariness. Her assistant quickly activated the wall screen, and the news reporter's face appeared, grim and solemn. "Breaking news," the reporter began. "We have confirmed reports that the human colony of New Seoul has been completely destroyed by forces of the Galactic Empire. Early reports suggest that over 5,000 children were specifically targeted and killed in the attack." Ji-won's world seemed to spin around her. She had friends on New Seoul. The colony was known for its commitment to peaceful research and excellent education. The survivors had sent only one word to describe their response to this atrocity. The reporter continued, "That word was destruction." Ji-won collapsed in her chair, the weight of the words sinking in. She thought of all the relationships she had nurtured, all the effort she had put into fostering peaceful exchanges with alien species. None of it mattered now. The Empire had crossed a line that could never be undone. Captain Bae Soo-hyun was loading cargo onto her merchant ship when the news reached her. For 15 years, she had run trade routes between human colonies, transporting everything from food to medical supplies. Her ship was meant for peace, not war. She called her crew together on the cargo deck. 10 good people who had signed up to help colonies grow and prosper. "I just got word about New Seoul," she said, her voice shaking with barely contained rage. "The Empire killed every child in the colony, over 5,000 of them." Her crew stood in stunned silence. Some had families on other colonies. All of them understood the gravity of the situation. "I'm volunteering my ship for military conversion," Captain Bae continued, her voice steady but resolute. "Anyone who wants to leave can take the escape pods to the nearest station. No shame in it, but I'm going to make the Empire pay for what they did." None of her crew left. On the industrial moon of Titan, Engineer Han Kyung was working on new mining equipment when the alert pinged on his computer. He read the report 3 times before he could process it. 5,000 children murdered by the Empire, specifically targeted. Han had always been a peaceful man. His machines were meant to create, not destroy. But as he sat in his workshop, surrounded by blueprints and tools, he began to think about different kinds of machines. The Empire had rules about warfare, treaties, conventions, and technologies designed to protect civilians. Yet the Empire had shattered every one of those rules. Han opened a new file on his computer, his hands shaking as he began to design weapons that would make the Empire regret their actions, the day they decided to slaughter human children across the galaxy. The reaction was swift and overwhelming. The word destruction spread faster than any news in human history. It appeared on every screen, every communication channel, every public display. Parents hugged their children closer, speaking in quiet, seething voices of fury. Peaceful researchers abandoned their projects, flocking to military initiatives. Merchant ships lined up at military bases, volunteering for conversion to warships. But something else was happening, something that even the humans hadn't anticipated. The word destruction was changing them. Within a week, Dr. Yin Ji-won found herself working in a military laboratory, tasked with developing biological weapons capable of targeting specific alien genetic markers. The peaceful scientist she had once been was gone, replaced by someone with cold, calculating eyes and hands that never shook. Captain Bei Su-hyun watched as her cargo ship was dismantled and rebuilt with weapon systems that violated 3 major galactic treaties. She no longer cared about those treaties. Engineer Hankying, who had once built machines for creation, now labored 18 hours a day designing weapons that would have horrified him just days before. Weapons capable of cracking entire planets. Weapons that could hunt ships across the vast expanse of space. Weapons that offered no possibility for surrender. The Empire's intelligence networks began to report unsettling findings. Human colonies, once quiet, had gone dark, not because they had been destroyed, but because they were working on something. Industrial output across human space had skyrocketed by 400%. Peaceful research stations were now manufacturing unknown technologies. The Empire's spies had no answers, only more troubling questions. Emperor Vexor received these reports in his palace on the capital world. A towering figure encased in crystalline armor, his body shimmering in rainbow patterns as he strode across his throne room. He had ruled the galaxy for 2 centuries, and in all that time, he had never considered humanity to be more than a nuisance. Their posturing, their grand speeches, they were weak. They lacked the will to wage real war. His intelligence chief, a spider-like creature named Kickstall, did not share the Emperor's confidence. "Your Majesty," Kickstall began, "our agents report that human ships are now broadcasting a single word on all frequencies: destruction. It's like they are making some kind of promise. Let them broadcast whatever they want." Vexor laughed dismissively. Words cannot harm the mighty Empire. But across the galaxy, the Empire's rivals were starting to take notice. The humans were a strange species, to be sure. They formed emotional bonds that other species found disconcerting, and they would sacrifice themselves for concepts like justice and honor. Now, all of that emotion had coalesced into one singular focus. Trade ships passing through human space reported that normal activity had ceased. No more cultural exchanges, no more diplomatic talks, no more scientific collaborations. Just preparation. The word destruction had grown beyond a mere message. It had become a mission. Every human in the galaxy now shared the same purpose: to make the Empire pay for the murder of 5,731 children. Months passed. The Empire's spies reported that human ships were moving in increasingly strange patterns. Instead of following the usual trade routes, they were positioning themselves around Imperial space like pieces on a chessboard. But the most disturbing reports came from the Imperial border worlds. Human merchants, diplomats, and traders, people who had lived and worked on these planets for years, had simply disappeared overnight. They weren't captured. They weren't killed. They were gone, erased as though they had never existed. Emperor Vexor began to feel the first pangs of unease. The humans were planning something, but what could they possibly do against the might of the Empire? He would find out soon enough. In the depths of space, Admiral Choi Miho stood on the bridge of his flagship, surveying the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled. Ships that had once been merchants were now armed with weapons that should not exist. Crews that had been peaceful traders were now soldiers, their eyes cold with the fire of vengeance. "Send a message to all ships," he ordered. Across the fleet, every screen displayed the same faces, the faces of 5,731 children who had died on New Sol. Beneath their images was a single word: destruction. The war was about to begin. General Song Dajo stood on the bridge of his ship, watching the Imperial fleet through the sensors. Cold satisfaction bubbled up inside him. 18 months had passed since New Sol. 18 months of relentless preparation, of designing weapons that the galaxy had never seen. The Imperial fleet believed they were hunting a small group of human raiders. What they didn't realize was that they were flying straight into the largest trap in galactic history. "All ships, this is General Song," he spoke into the comms. "Remember New Sol. Remember the children. Show them what destruction truly means." The Imperial fleet consisted of 47 warships, more than enough to conquer most star systems. They had been hunting human raiders, who had been attacking Imperial supply convoys. But what they found instead were 300 human ships appearing out of nowhere, as though they had materialized from thin air. These are no ordinary ships. Thanks to Hanking's designs, these vessels could bend space itself, becoming invisible to Imperial sensors. They could appear and vanish like ghosts in the void. The first phase of the attack lasted exactly 7 minutes. When it was over, the entire Imperial fleet was gone. Not destroyed in the usual sense, but erased from existence. Weapons had turned matter into pure energy, and energy into nothing. Admiral Vexer of the Imperial Navy had time to send only one final message before his flagship disappeared into nothingness. The humans are not fighting a war. They are conducting an extermination. On the planet below, Imperial ground forces waited for support that would never come. General Song's ships began the second phase of the operation. Broadcasting surrender terms, the communication officer announced. The message was simple. You have 10 minutes to evacuate the planet. After that, everything on the surface dies. General Klexmore, the Imperial commander on the ground, sent a furious reply. We do not negotiate with primitive species. We have 2 million soldiers on this world. General Song's response was even simpler. You have 9 minutes. Dr. Shin Era watched from her laboratory ship as the countdown reached 0. She had spent the last 18 months developing weapons that targeted specific genetic markers, biological agents that could differentiate between Imperial DNA and that of other species. Release the payload, General Song ordered. Invisible clouds of engineered biological agents drifted down from orbit. They were harmless to most life forms, but to the specific genetic markers found in Imperial species, they were absolutely deadly. The planet's plant life continued to flourish. The animals roamed freely. The civilian populations of other species were untouched. But every Imperial soldier on the planet simply stopped breathing. Planet cleared, Dr. Shin reported. No Imperial life signs detected. Good, General Song replied, his voice calm. Market is liberated. Move to the next target. This became the pattern across Imperial space. Human fleets would appear without warning, offering a single chance to surrender. If that offer was refused, they would eliminate all Imperial presence with swift precision. But the humans weren't just fighting on the front lines. Commander Omen led a new kind of warfare, one the galaxy had never seen before. His ghost fleets, controlled entirely by advanced artificial intelligence, were a terrifying force. These ships operated for months without a single human crew, materializing deep within Imperial space to dismantle supply lines and communication networks. The AI ships were given one simple mission. If it belongs to the Empire, destroy it. And they learned. They adapted faster than any Imperial commander could counter them. Imperial supply convoys began traveling with massive escort fleets, but it didn't matter. The ghost ships would wait until the escorts departed, then strike with surgical precision that no living pilot could match. We're fighting machines, Imperial Admiral Texer complained in a report to the capital. They don't need food, they don't need rest, and they don't make mistakes. Worse, they seem to enjoy hunting us. Agent Kong Dong-Yun read that report from his post deep within Imperial Intelligence Headquarters. For 3 years, he had been building a cover identity as a low-level analyst. The Empire still had no idea that humans had infiltrated their government and military for decades. Peaceful merchants and diplomats had quietly wormed their way into trusted positions throughout Imperial space. Now, those sleeper agents were waking up. Kong had access to Imperial military communications. Every night, he sent detailed information about fleet movements and defensive positions to human forces. During the day, he spread carefully crafted rumors that heightened fear and confusion among Imperial officers. But Kang's most important discovery came when he hacked into the Empire's historical archives. What he uncovered about New Seoul was far worse than anyone had imagined. The Imperial Research Division had discovered that during a specific phase of brain development, human children could naturally interface with ancient technology left behind by a vanished galactic civilization. This technology was immensely powerful, capable of things like faster-than-light communication with no delay and energy generation that could power entire star systems. The Empire had spent thousands of years trying to unlock these ancient systems, but they had found something unexpected. Human children could activate them naturally. The Empire, in its hubris, decided to capture some of these children for experimentation. But the plan had gone horribly wrong. The Imperial commander at New Sol had panicked when the children resisted the capture attempts. Instead of taking prisoners, he had ordered their deaths to prevent the humans from learning why they were special. Kong Dong-yun sent this information directly to Human Command. Within hours, every human in the galaxy knew the truth. Their children had been murdered, not for military strategy, but for a horrific experiment. The human response was swift and terrifying. Dr. Yun Jivon released biological weapons designed to cause maximum suffering to Imperial species. Not death, but weeks of excruciating agony before the inevitable end. Captain Bei Su-hyun led her converted merchant fleet in strikes against Imperial civilian targets, spaceports, communication hubs, industrial facilities, anything that kept the Empire functioning. Engineer Hanking's latest weapons could track Imperial ships across vast galactic distances. Once marked, an Imperial vessel could run for months, but it would eventually be found. And when it was a slow, agonizing death would be the fate of everyone aboard. The galaxy's other species watched in growing horror as humanity revealed the true meaning of total war. This wasn't conquest. This wasn't genocide in the traditional sense. This was the complete erasure of everything the Empire had built. Imperial worlds began surrendering without a fight. Entire fleets defected, preferring to abandon the Empire rather than face human forces. Some Imperial species chose mass suicide rather than wait for the humans to reach them. But surrender was not always accepted. The humans had created one simple rule. Any Imperial force that had ever been involved in operations against civilians would receive no mercy. The Empire's client species, dozens of alien races that had served Imperial interests, began to abandon their allegiance. Many sent messages to human forces, offering their help in hunting down Imperial survivors. "We never wanted to serve them," explained Ambassador Zilsta of the Hegemony Coalition to human negotiators. "They forced us through threats and violence. If you can end their power, we will help you do it." But the humans weren't interested in help. They weren't trying to form an alliance or replace Imperial rule with their own. They had one goal: complete destruction of everything the Empire stood for. Emperor Vexer, safe in his palace on the capital world, received reports that read like something from a nightmare. Entire sectors of space were going silent, not conquered but empty, as if the Empire had never existed there at all. "How many ships do they have?" he demanded from his military advisors. "We don't know, Your Majesty," Admiral Kexenal replied, his voice tinged with frustration. "Our estimates keep changing. They seem to have unlimited resources." "That's impossible," Vexer snapped. "Humans are a young species, with only a few dozen colonies." "Yes, Your Majesty, but they're not fighting like a normal species," Kexenal continued, his eyes narrowing with unease. "They're fighting like something we've never encountered before." The truth was that humanity had transformed itself beyond recognition. Every human colony, every research station, every civilian outpost had been converted into a military production facility. Children as young as 10 were working in factories, building weapons. Elderly citizens were designing new ways to kill Imperial forces. The word destruction had become more than just a battle cry. It had become the very core of human civilization. And they were only just beginning. On Earth, Admiral Choi Miho stood before a holographic display, observing the current state of the war. Red dots marked Imperial positions, but they were disappearing faster than the computers could update the map. "Sir," his aide reported, "we're receiving surrender offers from 17 Imperial species." "Rejected," Admiral Choi replied without hesitation. "Sir, some of these species had nothing to do with New Sol." Admiral Choi turned to face his aide. In his eyes was a cold fire that would have terrified even the most fearsome of demons. They are part of an empire that murdered our children, he said quietly. That makes them all guilty. The aide nodded grimly and returned to his station. Outside the command center, Earth's sky was filled with ships heading toward Imperial space. The word was spreading faster than human fleets could travel. Fear had become the Empire's greatest enemy, and humanity was its messenger. Emperor Vexor stood in his throne room, gazing out over the capital city of Zentros Prime. The greatest metropolis in galactic history stretched to the horizon, home to billions of beings from across the Empire. Just 2 years ago, he had ruled half the galaxy without question. Now, he was afraid to sleep. Your Majesty? Field Marshal Sexnall approached the throne, his forelegs trembling with exhaustion. I bring the latest reports from the front lines. More defeats? Vexor asked, though he already knew the answer. The Zirian sector has gone completely silent. 47 worlds, Your Majesty, Sexnall reported. We sent a scouting fleet to investigate. They found the planets intact, cities undamaged, forests still growing. But every Imperial citizen was simply gone. No bodies, no signs of violence. They just vanished. Vexor's crystalline armor cracked slightly under the strain. This was becoming the pattern. Human forces would arrive at an Imperial world, broadcast their single word, destruction, and within days, the world would be devoid of all Imperial life. How do they do it? He whispered. Field Marshal Sexnall had no answer. No one did. The humans had developed weapons and tactics that defied everything the Empire knew about warfare. In the intelligence center beneath the palace, Spymaster Ko Juna worked quietly at a computer terminal. To everyone around him, he appeared to be Junior Analyst Crixton, a harmless intelligence clerk who had worked there for years. But in reality, he was one of dozens of human agents who had infiltrated the highest levels of Imperial government. Tonight, he was implementing the final phase of humanity's psychological warfare campaign. His fingers flew across the alien keyboard, inputting commands that would alter every display screen in the capital city. Traffic monitors, news broadcasts, advertising displays, even personal communication devices would all show the same thing at exactly midnight. Ko Juna glanced at the clock, 11:58 p.m. He thought of the children of New Seoul and allowed a cold smile to curl on his lips. Across the city, Imperial citizens went about their evening routines. Families gathered for dinner. Workers headed home from late shifts. Students studied in libraries. At exactly midnight, every screen in the city displayed the same haunting image. The faces of 5,731 human children. Their eyes seemed to follow viewers as they moved. Their mouths opened and closed as if trying to speak. Below their faces, text appeared in every Imperial language. Why did you kill us? Panic spread like wildfire through the city. Citizens ran screaming from their homes. Traffic accidents piled up on the streets as drivers crashed while staring at their dashboard displays. Emergency services were overwhelmed with calls about ghost children appearing on every screen. But Ko Juna wasn't finished. At 12:30 a.m., Phase 2 was activated. Every communication device in the city began to play the same sound, children crying. The sound came from phones, computers, public address systems, and even military communication networks. The crying lasted for exactly 57 minutes and 31 seconds, 1 minute for each dead child. By morning, half of the Imperial capital was in a state of panic. Citizens refused to use electronic devices. Government workers abandoned their posts. Even the Imperial Guard is showing signs of stress, one officer reported. Emperor Vexor called an emergency meeting of his high command. This is psychological warfare, he announced, his voice strained. The humans are trying to break our morale. It's working, Your Majesty, admitted Admiral Texavor. Our troops are deserting faster than we can recruit new ones. Some of our client species are switching sides just to avoid facing human forces. Then we need to negotiate, suggested General Vixcar. Offer them reparations, territory, whatever they want. Emperor Vexor's eyes blazed with fury. We will not negotiate. I will not negotiate with primitives who resort to terror tactics, Emperor Vexor declared, his voice cold and resolute. But even as he spoke, he knew his position was becoming hopeless. Reports arrived hourly of new disasters. Entire imperial fleets were vanishing. Worlds were going silent. The Empire's economy was crumbling as trade routes became too perilous to use. Admiral Amanho stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the final preparations for Operation Absolute. 300 human ships hung in space around her, each one armed with weapons capable of annihilating entire star systems. They were just 3 days away from the Imperial capital. "All ships report ready," her tactical officer announced. "Excellent," Admiral Amanho replied. "Begin the approach. Send a message on all frequencies." The message was broadcast across every communication channel in Imperial space. It began with the faces of the dead children of New Sol, followed by simple text. "We are coming." The Empire attempted to jam the signal, but human technology had far surpassed their own understanding. The message appeared on screens across hundreds of worlds simultaneously, including within the Emperor's own palace. As the human fleet drew closer to the capital, something unprecedented occurred. Imperial worlds began surrendering to empty space. Planetary governors sent broadcasts offering unconditional submission to human forces that weren't even in their star systems yet. "Please," begged Governor Lexper of Zirian Prime. His voice strained as he spoke to cameras broadcasting across the galaxy. "We had nothing to do with the attack on New Sol. We surrender unconditionally. Please, show mercy to our families." But mercy was no longer a part of humanity's vocabulary. Agent Nam Yura moved through the corridors of the Imperial Palace, her disguise as a servant allowing her to move freely through the most secure building in the Empire. She had been working here for 4 years, cleaning floors, serving food, while secretly mapping every room, every corridor. Tonight was different. Tonight, she had a special delivery for the Emperor. She made her way to the throne room, pushing a simple cleaning cart. The Imperial guards barely glanced at her. After all, what threat could a cleaning servant possibly pose? Inside the cart, hidden beneath cleaning supplies, was a small communication device, programmed with a very specific message. Nam Yura waited until the throne room was empty before placing the device on the Emperor's throne. It was small enough to be concealed within the ornate decorations, but powerful enough to broadcast to every screen in the palace. As she left the throne room, she activated the device remotely. Emperor Vexor was in his private chambers when every screen in the palace suddenly flickered to life, displaying the same image. His own face, but changed. The image showed him as he would appear after experiencing the same terror that the human children had felt in their final moments. The recording began to speak in his own voice. "I am Emperor Vexor, murderer of children. I ordered the death of innocents, and now I will pay the price." The Emperor rushed to his communication systems, trying to shut down the broadcast, but it was futile. The signal was coming from inside his own palace, using his own communication networks. Then came the final part of the message. The screen shifted to the faces of 5,731 children, each one looking directly at the Emperor. Their mouths moved in perfect unison, speaking a single word: destruction. The broadcast ended, but the damage was already done. Every being in the palace had seen their Emperor's face twisted with terror. More importantly, the broadcast had been transmitted to every Imperial world, all at once. Field Marshal Sexnall burst into the Emperor's chambers. "Your Majesty, we have a problem. A big problem." "What now?" Vexor asked, his voice thin with dread. "Our client species are revolting. The Hegemony Coalition just declared independence. The Outer Rim Federation has joined the humans. Even our own military is starting to question orders." Vexor walked to his window and looked out at the capital city. Smoke was rising from several districts. Riots had erupted as different species fought among themselves. His perfect empire was tearing itself apart. "How long until the human fleet arrives?" he asked quietly. 3 days, Your Majesty. "And our defenses?" "Minimal. Most of our fleet has either been destroyed or has deserted. The planetary defense systems are operated by beings who are more afraid of the humans than they are of us." Vexor stood in silence for a long moment, his mind racing. Outside his window, his capital city burned. Across the galaxy, his empire crumbled. And in 3 days, humanity would arrive to finish what they had started. For the first time in his 2-century reign, the Emperor of the Galaxy understood what it meant to be truly afraid. In her hidden chamber beneath the palace, Agent Nam Yura sent her final report to Human Command. Target is broken. Resistance minimal. Ready for final phase. The response came back immediately. Understood. Begin evacuation of non-Imperial civilians. Operation Absolute commences in 72 hours. Nam Yura smiled as she began packing her equipment. Soon, the Empire would learn what the word destruction really meant. And unlike the children of New Seoul, they would have time to understand what was happening to them. Admiral Wu Tan stood on the bridge of the flagship Vengeance, watching the Imperial capital world grow larger on the main screen. Behind him, the largest human fleet ever assembled waited in perfect formation. 300 ships, each carrying enough firepower to crack planets and burn stars. But as they approached Zentro's prime, something unexpected happened. Admiral, his communications officer reported, "We're receiving surrender signals from the planetary defense grid." From the defense systems? "No, sir," the officer replied. "From individual beings operating those systems. They're abandoning their posts and broadcasting personal surrender messages." Admiral Wu watched the tactical display as red dots, representing Imperial defenses, blinked out one by one. Not destroyed, simply abandoned. "Sir," another officer called out, "we're detecting massive civilian evacuations on the planet's surface. Non-Imperial species are fleeing the capital city. Let them go." Admiral Wu ordered, his voice calm. "We're not here for them." The truth was that humanity's psychological warfare had worked better than anyone had anticipated. The Empire hadn't just lost the will to fight. It had collapsed from within, devoured by fear and guilt. On the planet below, Emperor Vexor sat alone in his throne room. His guards had deserted him. His advisors had fled. Even his personal servants had abandoned the palace. The great throne room, once filled with diplomats from hundreds of species, was now silent except for the Emperor's labored breathing and the distant sound of explosions from the rioting city below. A small chime echoed through the emptiness, signaling someone was requesting entry to the throne room. The Emperor almost laughed. Who would possibly want to see him now? "Enter," he called out. The massive doors opened, and a single figure stepped inside. It was a human female dressed in the simple robes of a palace servant, but her eyes held a sharp intelligence and purpose that no servant would possess. "Your Majesty," Agent Namura said with a slight bow, "I am Agent Namura of Human Intelligence. I have been working in your palace for 4 years." Emperor Vexor felt his crystalline armor crack further. "A spy, of course. I have something for you," Namura continued, placing a small communication device on the floor between them. "A final gift from the children of New Seoul." The Emperor stared at the device. "What is it?" "The truth," Namura replied. "About what you did. About why you did it. About what it cost you." She activated the device and stepped back. The air above the device shimmered, and a holographic display materialized. It showed the faces of all 5,731 children who had died on New Seoul. But these weren't still images. The children moved and spoke as though they were alive. "Why?" asked a little girl with pigtails. "Why did you kill us?" "We were just playing," said a boy holding a toy spaceship. "We never hurt anyone." One by one, each child spoke directly to the Emperor. They asked simple questions that cut deeper than any weapon. Why had we died? What had we done wrong? Why hadn't anyone protected us? Emperor Vexor tried to look away, but found he couldn't. The holographic children surrounded his throne, their innocent faces filled with confusion and pain. "You killed us for experiments," said an older girl, perhaps 12 years old. "You wanted to use our brains to power your machines. But we would have helped if you had just asked," added a young boy. "Humans like to help people." The Emperor's breathing became labored. The children weren't angry or vengeful. They were just sad and confused. Somehow, that was worse than any threat or curse. "Now your empire is gone. the children said in unison. Now your people fear you. Now you are alone, just like we were when we died. The hologram faded, leaving the Emperor alone with Agent Namura. That's not the worst part, she said quietly. What could be worse? Vexor asked, his voice shaky. The worst part, Namura continued, is that we forgive you. Emperor Vexor looked up in shock. What? The children forgive you. That's what makes this so terrible. Human children forgive easily, even when they shouldn't. Those kids would have forgiven you if you had just said you were sorry. Namura walked toward the throne room exit. But their parents don't forgive. Their teachers don't forgive. And humanity as a species will never forgive. She paused at the doorway, turning to face him. You have 10 minutes before the human fleet arrives. I suggest you use that time to think about what you've done. Emperor Vexor sat alone on his throne as the sounds of battle grew nearer. Through the palace windows, he could see human ships descending through the atmosphere like falling stars. But the battle was brief. Imperial forces surrendered or fled at the first sight of the human fleet. Those few who attempted to resist were eliminated so swiftly that the fighting was over almost before it began. Director Ryu Inu stepped out of the first human transport to land in the capital. He was followed by a team of specialists whose job was to establish humanity's new role in the galaxy. The team moved quickly through the abandoned streets, setting up communication arrays and administrative centers. Within hours, they had secured control over the planet's infrastructure. But Director Ryu's first stop was the Imperial Palace. He found Emperor Vexor still sitting on his throne, staring blankly at nothing. Your Majesty, Director Ryu said formally, his voice calm and commanding. The Emperor looked up slowly. Have you come to execute me? No, Director Ryu replied, his tone steady. Execution would be too merciful. He gestured to his assistants, who began setting up recording equipment around the throne room. You will remain here in this throne room for the rest of your life, Director Ryu continued. Every day, you will watch recordings of the children you murdered. Every night, you will record a personal apology to each child's family. And if I refuse? Director Ryu's expression remained unchanged. Then we will keep you alive and conscious for as long as our medical technology allows, centuries if necessary. The children of New Seoul deserve justice, not vengeance. Emperor Vexor realized, in that moment, the true depth of humanity's plans. They had not just devised a punishment. They had designed perfect justice. As the recording equipment activated, the first holographic child appeared, an innocent little girl who smiled and waved at the Emperor before speaking. Do you remember me? She asked softly. My name was Park Mina. I was 7 years old. Director Ryu left the Emperor to his eternal punishment and walked out to address the galaxy. His voice was calm, his words carrying across every communication channel that reached the farthest corners of the former empire. In the main hall of the Imperial Palace, standing before the cameras that would broadcast his message across countless worlds, Director Ryu began. Citizens of the former Galactic Empire, he said, his voice unwavering. I am Director Ryu Inu of the human hegemony. As of today, the Empire is dissolved. He let the weight of those words sink in, allowing silence to echo across hundreds of worlds. The camera focused on his face, capturing every word as it became etched into history. Humanity has no interest in ruling the galaxy, he continued. We have no desire for territory or tribute. We have only one law that we will enforce throughout the galaxy. Ryu paused, his gaze steady and resolute. The words he was about to speak would define a new era. No species will harm human children. Any being, any government, any organization that threatens the safety of human children will be completely destroyed. This is not a negotiation. This is not a treaty. This is a fundamental law of existence. As the cameras panned, the screens behind Ryu displayed images of human ships patrolling trade routes, human stations monitoring communication networks, human agents embedded in governments across the galaxy. We will be watching. We will be listening. We will know if you even think about harming our children. The broadcast continued for another hour, detailing the new reality humanity had imposed. Species that had suffered under the Empire's tyranny were now free to govern themselves. Trade routes would be protected by human ships. Disputes would be mediated by human negotiators. But the one absolute rule remained clear: harm a human child and face complete annihilation. Years passed. The galaxy adjusted to its new reality. Children across hundreds of worlds grew up hearing stories about the humans who would protect them from monsters. The word destruction entered every galactic language, but its meaning evolved. It was no longer just a threat. It had become a promise of protection. On worlds where children were mistreated, the adults whispered of the humans who might come. The word destruction had become a tool, not just to protect human children, but all children throughout the galaxy. Emperor Vexor remained in his throne room, now a broken and aging creature. He spent his days apologizing to the holographic images of dead children. His empire was but a fading memory, but his punishment, his eternal penance, endured. On New Sol, now rebuilt and thriving, children played in parks while their parents worked nearby. In the center of the colony, a memorial stood, listing the names of 5,731 children who had perished. Below those names was a single word: destruction. But the word had transformed. It no longer meant what it once had. Now, it symbolized the eradication of evil so that innocence could flourish. The galaxy had learned that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or tactics. It was their unwavering, uncompromising refusal to accept that some things were beyond protection. The word had become flesh, and that flesh had become law. Humanity had kept their promise.